Good afternoon, world history class. I'm coming to you from my study today. Yesterday you were supposed to watch a video that told you about the first part of the communist revolution in Russia. We're going to pick up where that left off yesterday. I'm only using those videos to help me get everything done in a day, so I'm sorry that you guys got that one yesterday, but I think yours is really good. The guy that does those is very knowledgeable and he does a good job. But we're going to pick up where he left off yesterday with the communist takeover of Russia, and then we'll finish that off today. Tomorrow we'll look at fascism's growth in Italy and Germany. Okay, so yesterday you talked about the rise of Lenin and Kerensky. You talked about Rasputin and the Duma. I'm just picking out the bold-faced words in that section. We're going to pick up there today with the founding of the USSR. Okay, Vladimir Lenin was the main force behind it. He was a Bolshevik. As you learned yesterday, Bolsheviks were the more radical. The Mensheviks were moderates, and they wanted to see the revolution come in slowly, where the Bolsheviks wanted it to come in immediately and violently. And that was Lenin, and he was actually freed from prison in Germany by the Germans with the hope that he would go home and he would force the revolution, and that's exactly what he did. He was a Bolshevik. He was a Marxist, or he claimed to be a Marxist, but he had a couple of main areas where he was very different from Marxism. And these are not in your notes, but you might want to add them in there. 3 ways in which he was very different from Marxists. Marxists believed that revolution should come in calmly and with control, but he believed that the revolution needed to come in violently. That's one way. The second way is Marxism did not believe that it believed that the people could bring in a revolution, a whole group of people, whereas Lenin believed that the revolution needed strong leadership to come in, that it would not happen without strong leadership. And the third way is that they were different, is Marxism believed that the people as a whole would rise up and that everybody would own their government the same. That we wouldn't have one person better than another, but all of us would be equal. And Lenin did not believe that. He believed that power needed to stay in the hands of a few. That you needed that strong leadership, that was point number 2, and the power needed to stay in the hands of a few. So in a lot of ways, Lenin looks like a communist on the outside, like a Marxist, but what he was really doing was he was using Marxism as a front, as a shield, if you would, while he built a dictatorship. Why was he so successful? Well, a couple of different reasons. He seized control in November of 1917. And I would say that probably the most important reason that he was successful is that he let other people be afraid. They had 2 groups, and we're going to look at this on the next slide. They had the Reds, who are the Soviets wanting to take control, the Marxists, and the Whites. And the Whites were more moderate. They were the Mensheviks, not wanting necessarily, they wanted to do away with the Tsar, but they didn't want necessarily a communist government. And he got enough people to believe that if the Whites took control, that they would restore the Tsar. They'd bring back the Tsar. And that was not what the Whites wanted at all. They didn't want the Tsar back. They wanted a republic form of government. But he got enough people to believe that the Bolsheviks were successful. This is a map of the country that Lenin created. He named it the Russian Soviet Federated Socialist Republic. It will be Stalin who changes the name to USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. Okay, so Civil War erupts. We have these two groups. We have the whites and the reds. They have signed a treaty, the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, to get out of the war with the Germans. So the German plan was successful. They released Lenin in the hopes of getting the Russians out of the war, and it worked. This civil war is going to go on for 4 years with the Red Army versus the White Army. I can hear Daniel now complaining about the names red and white. Leon Trotsky is the one who will eventually come forward as a leader of the Red Army, and he will lead the Red Army to numerous great victories and their eventual control of the country. Okay, so the Red Army is victorious, and as soon as they are victorious, Russia is now a communist state. They do a couple of things right away, like moving the capital to Moscow. It was in St. Petersburg. They're going to move it to Moscow. And as I said on the previous slide, Lenin is going to stay in charge for a while, but as soon as he is out of control and Stalin is placed in leadership, they will change the name to the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. There's nothing republic about the USSR, okay? It's not a republican form of government in any way, shape, or form, so it really is an odd name. And in your notes, this point here, if you copied your notes out of the PowerPoint, this point would have read war capitalism, and that is not what it should have said. So as I was studying for my notes and to do this video, I had changed that to war communism. That is what they brought in. War communism, not war capitalism. This was designed to bring, war communism was designed to bring communist philosophies into every aspect of life for the USSR. We'll eventually get to new economic policy, but let me explain war communism first. War communism gave the government total control over all kinds of aspects of industry, especially the farms. So all of the people who used to own a farm, now the government owns all the farms, and those people that owned it before now work for the government. They have no incentive to do anything better, because if there is any excess of product, the government takes it. There is no reason for them to work any harder in one day than in another. They have, it was just a terribly sad way to live. Now, the new economic policy, this happened in 1921 through 1928. The Russian economy, because of the lack of incentive, is headed into the toilet. It's doing so badly that eventually they go, you know what, we got to do something or everybody's going to die. So let's try this. And what the new economic policy is all it is they're going to relax some of the controls of communism and reinstitute just a little bit of capitalism to help the economy recover. That's all it was really doing. It's just elements of capitalism within the industry to help them recover. Okay, so the USSR is going to gain in strength. This is the 1920s. Stalin is now a dictator. Excuse me. Let's back up a minute. Excuse me. Ate some peanuts before I started this video, and now I'm regretting that. Okay. Lenin dies, and there's a fight for power between Stalin and Trotsky. Trotsky, remember, was the military leader who had helped him win his victory in the first place. Stalin, however, is a little bit stronger as far as in front of the people. The people like him a little bit better. He forces his way in, and Trotsky is out. Stalin, when he comes into power, institutes what he calls the 5-year plans. In these 5-year plans, he set goals for all different industries. the automobile industry, the metals, all industries, whether they were producing food or clothing or what, all of them had goals to meet. And then the farms were collectivized. That's the explanation I was just giving you about no more individually owned farms. They're all collectively owned by the government. This, of course, is opposed by peasants everywhere. Nobody likes this idea. Nobody wants to work for the government. So, but the problem is that if you opposed it too loudly and too vehemently before the government, they would literally put you to death in the 5-year plan. You were going to die because you spoke out against the government. And also at this period of time, there is a severe famine in the entire world, really. This is in the middle of the Great Depression in America. We've had the Dust Bowl where things have just been, it's so dry, we can't get any water. And they have this also happening in Russia. So the results of this are about 5 million Russians died. It was a terrible time to be alive. It was very difficult, not only for the Russians, but for the rest of the world as well. The problem is that Stalin not only controlled all the industry, he also controlled the media. So the only information that got out to the rest of the world was favorable for communism. So sometime around 1936 or so, we start seeing what is now called the Reign of Terror. This is Stalin's attempt to have complete domination over everything going on in the USSR. He starts what he calls purges, where he is literally taking out his own party members. Almost 1 million. I think your book estimates it at 800,000 Communist Party members are killed for speaking out or saying something against their party, or even maybe thinking it, or maybe whispering to a neighbor. He also attempts at this point to wipe out Christianity. Churches are closed, schools are closed, pastors are thrown in prison. Your book has the story of Peter Vins in it. He was a pastor in Russia during this time, and he spent a good deal of time in prison, and I think eventually died there. One of them, his son, Georgy Vins, I've read his biography in the past, and it's really very good. But these are men who literally gave their life for the cause of Christ in communist Russia. Okay, so all of this is continuing to look good from the outside, but inside, the whole country is just barely holding it together. As far as foreign policy goes, Lenin had begun a policy he called Comintern, which basically is communist internship, communist international, where they want to spread communism around the whole world. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I'm not sure which, while Lenin tried to promote communism around the world, Stalin felt like he needed to strengthen communism in Russia first, and then he would spread it around the world. So that's what he's going to do. He kind of ignores the Comintern idea for a little while, and we will come back to that later after World War II, when Stalin will install puppet governments around the world and attempt to spread communism that way. But he first wanted to build up communism at home. He did, oddly enough, get diplomatic recognition from lots of Western nations, including Britain, France, and Italy, all recognizing, oh, look what Stalin's done. This is great. This is a wonderful government in Russia. They are no longer a czarist nation. Won't this be terrific? But people they only saw what Stalin wanted them to see, and it was not good. All right, so I'm about out of time. I hope you are doing well. Look for the quiz to go along with this, or a question. I haven't decided which yet. Thanks. Have a great day.